Life can throw unexpected challenges our way, and it's during these moments of vulnerability that our mindset becomes an essential tool. Whether you're grappling with a debilitating illness, recovering from a severe injury, or supporting a loved one through their health journey, the right mindset can make all the difference. Our mission is to provide you with the knowledge, inspiration, and practical strategies to harness the strength within, empowering you to face life's challenges with courage, grace, and unwavering determination. Now, your host of A Healing Mindset Matters, Rodney Blount.
Hey everybody, I'm Rodney Blount, and I'm very glad to join all of you tonight, and thank you for being here. And I want to open with just a little few notes here that the radio station that I've been working with, I just got word today that it will be fully closed by September 25th. And that prohibits my show next week because I won't be within that time frame. So within the last 2 hours, the owner of the show and producer came up with an idea that I was going to give. I had originally thought I would have through the end of the month to talk, so we would break down this issue of how a mindset helps you heal yourself. And so we came up with an idea that I was seeing if there was another slot that I could get put into this upcoming week so that I could complete this. And so we decided on an option that we would go 2 hours. So this show's going to combine 2 shows at once, and I am going to catch up with recapping what we spoke about last week, and we are going to look at the issue of, do you really think you could heal yourself from something major? So I have this on a questionnaire for when my clients sign up. One of the questions I ask them, or 2 of the questions I ask them, is, do you think you can heal yourself from something minor? And it's almost always a yes that I get on that questionnaire. And then the next question is, do you think that you could heal yourself from something major, something even catastrophic? And the response is, as you might think, there's a lot of doubt that comes with that, and I get yeses and nos on that. But what we're going to try to condense tonight for you is how to help you become the healer that you were here to be. So I have another question for you. I'm wondering how many of you out there think that you could have something to do with helping this world heal itself. Because as my teacher taught me long ago, that the people that are here on this planet at this time and hearing these words and getting this message are people who have some sense of wanting to contribute to the world and wanting to make it a healed place, to put it specifically. I have many, many clients, especially many over the years, who have indicated to me that they wanted to branch out on their own once we got all healed up and everything, to do their part to help this world become a better place. And I think that the answer to doing that is to help people understand and learn that you heal yourself. No one, no body, no procedure, no place does it for you. You do it. You are the healer. Anyone who helps you in any way heal yourself is just helping you create the conditions for your body to heal itself. Because you have coded within your body healing instructions for everything that happens in your life. And so I want everybody to understand that the title of the show, A Healing Mindset Matters, is designed to draw people to look and tune in who are interested in helping the world as well as helping themselves. So I think if you're listening to this, I would venture to say that you may not know it or not, but if you're listening to this, you are here to help the world heal itself. And I believe in reincarnation, and some people may not agree with that, but Christ rose from the dead, and so using that as my mentor, it's like, why shouldn't other people be able to leave their bodies, go into their higher consciousness, and have a meet with God and decide whether or not they wanted to come back into physical reality again to learn more. So that being said, anybody can do this. Everybody is welcome. There is not a person that is welcome that is not welcome to this show. And I hope that the right people happen to tune in and catch this so that they can benefit from understanding. If you want to do anything for the world at large, it all starts with you. And it starts with your understanding of health and what good health is and what illness is and what are its functions and what any good healer should do for you, whether that be a doctor, an alternative healer, it doesn't matter. There's certain things that are required for healing. And so the purpose of A Healing Mindset Matters was to lay out a way that all of you could learn to tap your own abilities to heal yourself. And then once you prove it to yourself, if you're anything like me, you can't help but want to pass it on to as many people as you possibly can. So that's what we're doing with this. And so to begin with, I'm going to recap last week just a little bit. We were talking about the benefits of a healing mindset. And one of the things I would like to say to people is once you understand this mindset and once you're acquainted with it and you implement it into your life is going to get incrementally easier and easier and easier. And you'll be less and less worried, less and less stressed. You will not have to flee. If illness comes your way, you'll have a way to walk right through it. So the process of good health and what it takes to maintain that it's two things. It's a state of being that you will achieve by applying the process. And it's also a set of actions that you have to take in order to get there. So last week we spoke about the beginning parts of the process, and I just want to review that a little bit. So when we say good health as a process, that makes it distinctly different than an automatic program that, say, for instance, governs the growing of a leaf, the growing of a tree, and also all of your subconscious patterns that you involve yourself with thinking wise on a daily basis. And it will be explained as a process. So good health is a process that's constantly going, never ending. It's always fluid. It's always flexible. It is always expanding, always. And it is also a state of being that you achieve by understanding those principles and understanding how to apply them. So once you get accustomed to believing that you can heal yourself, not only from something minor, but also from the most major things that you could believe. And I have thousands and thousands and thousands of clients to prove it, that they healed themselves. And I came in as a guide and as a healer to put forth whatever I could to help them on their journey, but they all healed themselves. And I have been working since 1978 with terminal, chronic, and acute illnesses. And I saw on average during that time 3 to 4 people a day, pretty much 7 days a week. And my sessions used to last 2 hours, 3 hours. And a lot of times people would ask me, it's like, there's no way I can work on anything for 2 hours. And we end up sitting for 4 hours and working, because the intricacies of getting well are so beautiful and they're so uplifting. Once you start to understand them, you want more. So what we talked about last week was that there is a process to gaining and establishing good health. And all processes start when you put your attention on something with intention. So let's just pick up right from there. And I want to tell you, I'm going to make a little noise with the paper here. I want to tell you what the 7 distinctive stages of the process of good health are, and show you ways to implement them, and explain to you ways how they're tied together so that you can begin to understand exactly where you're at in your healing process, and to also know, wow, when can I say I've completed healing? And for instance, I work with people who are stage 4 metastatic cancers of various sorts over the years, and they all work with their doctors. They all do everything that the doctor requires, but I help them out with what the doctors can't do. And I don't claim in any way to provide any healing for anyone. I get to have the joy of watching people heal themselves as I give them information as we progress along. So last week we talked about the first stage of the process of good health, and that every process starts out with the focus, and every process also has 7 very distinctive stages. So the process of good health begins with the focus, and by the focus, sorry to make noise with these papers here as we go along, but as we look at the focus of the process of good health, we're talking about beginning your healing journey and beginning to find your way back to good health, in spite of whatever you've been told. If there was a path into illness, there's a path out, because it doesn't happen overnight, and it may seem as though it does sometimes, but I can guarantee you there's always a way to create conscious awareness around where you're at, to a point to where you can turn that awareness into healing energy and power for yourself. So the first stage of the process of good health is as I said, the focus. Now, so imagine that you're someone who has become ill or has a injury, and you come to someone like myself, and it doesn't matter. It could be straight to the doctor. It could be doctor first, then me. I usually require people that I work with to show me what they've been diagnosed with, what their healing treatment plan is, and what their prognosis is. So I know how to help them maximize their interactions with the healing community. So the process of good health begins with the focus, and focus has two components to it, and they are as follows. The first is learning how to have fun, and the second is learning how to consciously create success. So just let that sink in for a moment. So let's think, what could learning how to have fun have any connection to being well and being in the process of good health, which is always expanding, always continuing, always flexible, always fluid? What does learning how to have fun specifically have anything to do with that? Well, I like to work with functional understandings when I teach people and when I help them. And a functional understanding of what does it mean to learn how to have fun. Well, fun in this instance, in a working functional description, is your thoughts, actions, deeds, and everything that you encounter, people, places, things, have to be imbued with love. So you have to, when you start getting well, you'll usually realize that you've lost your connection to things that you love. People, places, things, thoughts, actions, deeds. And if you can imagine just for a moment, just take your mind and think about what it's like if you haven't engaged a person, a place, a thing, and you haven't had thoughts, actions, or deeds that were loving and allowing you to be loved and allowing you to receive love as well. Just think what that's like and think what that would do to your health as that begins to take hold and takes root in your life. And all of a sudden, one day you get a diagnosis with something, and I can assure you that you can trace it back. One of the components that you will find is somehow, in some way, you've become disconnected from people, places, things, and thoughts, and actions, and deeds that you love. Because love is the fuel for the entire universe, period. End of story. No question in my mind, no doubt in my mind. And to help you have a little definition of love the way I mean it, it starts out with giving, and it doesn't mean to give what you have. It means to give of who you are, to give of your strengths, your talents, and your gifts, and your abilities in this world, openly and without reservation, to yourself first, always, and then those that you love and care about, and the world at large. So think of it in this way. Your love always gives, always. Love always responds. That means if something has happened and it's not complete, say, imagine you had a falling out with someone, there's always some kind of break there where the love gets stopped and the love stops flowing. And the way you have to reinitiate it is to give to whoever you're mad at or had a breakup with. And you can start by forgiving. So if you think of the word forgiving, if you break it down, it means to give in advance so as to create the conditions for healing. So love always starts with forgiving, and it always evolves into pure giving of your strengths and talents and gifts. Then it's about responding. If the message didn't get across the first time and there's a second cry for help from someone, you respond. Even though you may think, well, I've already reached out to them, I've already reached out to the world, whatever, and it turned me down and it turned me away. You have to go one step further and respond, to come back and take another look. And then giving, so forgiving to begin with, because that lets you out of prison. If you can't forgive, if you can't create space in advance for healing to occur, you're missing the whole nature of the process of good health. So giving, responding, respecting. So now, how do we look at respecting? Just break the word down again. Respecting. If somebody asks you once and they ask you twice and they reached out and you still haven't been able to make amends, then you have to respect. That means you re-inspect the situation. So you come back and you engage a person to get more clear understanding of what their issues are and what drove the two of you apart. And that could be between you and the world or you and a just normal, everyday person. There's something that would drive you apart that would cut off from love. So you have to forgive, you have to create that space, then you have to put yourself in the mindset, I'm going to give to whatever it is that is broken in my life. I'm going to respond to whatever it is that's broken in my life. And I'm going to respect whatever it is that's broken in my life. Now just think about how your life could change as you go through the process of forgiveness. And we're going to go in depth on this in a later show. And I will be back somehow. You guys can find me. I'll be starting my own YouTube channel and podcasts and stuff here very soon. But for right now, just rest assured that you'll find me again and I will be back. And so back to love and back to the focus. So realizing a focus is the beginning of a process. That's where you put your attention down on something with intention. And those two things combined will literally initiate a process in your life. And this process of healing and the process of good health has those 7 distinctive stages. And the first part is the focus. And the focus, as I stated, is learning how to have fun, consciously create success, and learning how to have fun being described as re-engaging and restoring your thoughts, your actions, your deeds, and people, places, and things, getting back in alignment with that. I've had people who are ill that are bedridden, they can't go anywhere, they couldn't do anything. And they were thinking like, Rodney, how could I love anybody? I'm the victim here of this illness or injury, and I'm cut off from being able to get around people, places, things, or thoughts and actions and deeds. So I'm very limited in my ability to do that. And I I've had people, we've just put up photographs of their life and their most fun, happy times of their life around them. And that's just one way that a simple little way that you can remember something you love. So if you have photographs or if you have memories or you have memorabilia and stuff, put that stuff around you and let yourself start feeling the things you loved again. And you can think about a wonderful pet that you've had. It could be a dog, it could be a cat, it could be a horse. And in these days and times, depending upon who you are, you could have your own zoo. But main point is get back to love. And so once you give, you learn how to respond when the first attempt didn't make connection. You've learned to respect, to come back and re-inspect your approach, to look over it again. And that brings you to the fourth component of love, which is humility, which another functional definition of this is knowing and understanding that regardless of whatever the past has been, the very next second can be absolutely, completely, totally different. And I'll give you a little example of that is to imagine that during times of the Cold War that you were in East Berlin or you were in Soviet Russia. And I'm sure if you were a citizen during those times, during the Cold War, very few people thought this can change someday. The structure of our government, the structure of, and I'm speaking about those particular governments, could change someday. But even myself, I was looking at it going, the Soviet Union is always going to be the Soviet Union. Berlin's always going to be divided. There's always going to be this Eastern Bloc and the Western Bloc countries, and there's no hope for that. And then one morning I woke up and turned on the news, and the Berlin Wall was coming down, and people were happy in the streets, celebrating. And then the Soviet Union broke up and it changed forms. And so that requires some humility in order to be able to imagine something in the next second that could be radically, totally, undoubtedly different than anything that has been present up to this point. So always look at your present as part of the healing process. It's always expanding, always growing. It's flexible, it's fluid, it's always deepening. So always keep in your heart, when you're looking at what you want to focus on to start to become well, the first component of learning how to have fun, and that means sticking around things that you love, also requires that you have humility, that the very next second can be different than anything that's ever been like it before. You then develop a higher octave of understanding where you have the courage to commit. And that's the courage to commit to your healing process and to the process of good health and to attaining your good health, even in spite of whatever anyone has ever told you. I've had people usually come to me once they've exhausted everything. I'm hoping that changes because I hate to see people that far down the line of illness that they're in that position. I wish I could have contacted them sooner, but typically people will come to me as a last resort. They've exhausted all their medical means. They've exhausted alternative means. They've gone through a list of people, and finally someone tells them about me because I've only taken on clients that have been referred to me. So I've only worked by word of mouth up until this point, and that's all going to change because I have to reach a bigger audience in the world, and I have to reach out into the world if I want to do that. So I have to have the humility myself to know that whatever my life has been like up to this point and whatever my healing career has been up to this point. In the very next second, it can all change. And I can go from working one-on-one, as I have been since 1978, to having a total presence throughout the world and helping people heal and guide them with my knowledge, as opposed to having to be in person all the time. If you understand these processes and how these things function, you can learn this on your own. But for right now, I'm the only person I know of who is teaching this at all. And I could be totally wrong, but I'm just the only one that I know of. I don't know anybody else who teaches this because I was taught by a very special teacher. I mentioned before in the last show, named Lazarus, Lazaris, who taught me these ways to heal. And I became the kind of healer I wanted to be over a period since 1978, due in large part to the information that I've learned from my teacher, Lazarus. So Lazarus also taught that once you have the courage to commit to loving yourself, because this all starts with you and it must start with you until you have enough traction, until you have enough understanding for you to be able to go out into the world and to help people heal and to help them understand how to enter into the process of good health. So we're still on the focus, and this is how intricate it is. So, and we're on the part of learning how to have fun, which means learning how to stay near what you love. And to do that, you got to forgive, then you give, you respond, you respect. You have the humility to know that no matter what the world has looked like up until any given second, there's always hope, there's always an opening, and it can turn on a dime in your favor. You have to have that humility, and that's part of what re-engaging loving is all about. Then you have the courage to commit to your healing journey, and then you have the willingness to be intimate, and I don't mean intimate physically with the person, but to be intimate with being honest with yourself and honest with whoever you're engaged in your healing process with. Because that type of intimacy is you allowing someone to have knowledge that they could turn around and use against you if they wanted to. So you still decide to have humility in order to present you with the possibility of being intimate and not have that work against you. And then finally, a willingness to be vulnerable. And that ties into the intimacy as well. So giving, responding, respecting, all started with forgiving. Then the humility to know that the next second can be different than anything that's ever been on the world. So no matter what diagnosis, what prognosis anyone has ever given you, the very next second can be different. And someone asked me last week, how long does it take to heal? And I responded that it can take years and it can also take seconds, and it can be spontaneous. But you have to have that mindset that you're going to have that willingness to drive the courage to commit to your healing process, then to being intimate with the details of it, and to allow yourself that vulnerability. So you can think about the focus of the process of good health as the beginning point, stage one, as learning how to have fun, learning how to consciously create success. Now, what do I mean by learning how to consciously create success? Well, if you were to examine it and give yourself a chance to understand being successful, we give it the connotations of being special, and we elevate success to a level that if there's any kind of failure and you're unable to accept that, because a lot of us have been put in mindsets that are all about success, they're all about attaining material wealth, they're all about being top in your spot, whatever you're engaged in, and they don't take into account what happens to the larger unseen parts of you when you become successful. And you can only gain access to those unseen parts of you if you examine and become intimate to the degree that you can find the meaning in everything that happens to you in your entire life. One of my teachers was teaching me one time, and he was explaining this to me, and we were doing it in the context of healing, and I asked, I know I should really learn from the big stuff, and I know I should really go deep and create understanding around big illnesses or injuries that happen to me, but what about something like stubbing my toe? Do I have to understand that and have meaning from that in order to keep on continuing to be well and growing and expanding? And the answer was yes. Everything has meaning. You just have to be willing to take the time to look and be willing to take the time to just sit and ask your higher self or the universe, what could this possibly mean to me? People do it with the big illnesses, with the big injuries, but I'm stating that if you do it in your life for everything, that will definitely be steering you towards a happy, healthy life. And to understand the meaning of everything, think about people who have lived great lives. One thing we could always say about them is their life had so much meaning, it had so much depth, it had so much richness to it. That's because the people who attain those levels, they do make meaning out of everything, and nothing slides by. Now, it may take no more than 2 or 3 seconds to make the meaning out of something. It's like, stub my toe coming around a corner. It's like, I can think, what's where you're going? Pay attention to where you're deliberately going. And if you're not deliberate about it, if you're just unconsciously walking around and you happen to jam your toe into the wall or the door, it might be a message to watch where you're going and to also make meaning out of where you've been. So here we are, we're in the process of good health, and we're just at stage 1 of the process, where, remember, when you put your attention with intention on something over time, you will begin a process, and it will begin to take a very distinctive shape, and you'll realize when you're in one stage or another. So this stage 1, the focus, think about that. Learning how to have fun. All of a sudden, now you have something to do. And I can see my clients light up when I get them to the stage, get them back to being around people, places, things, thoughts, actions, deeds that you love. Then often people who I'm working with who are ill consider themselves a failure. And there's no such thing as failure in my book. There's only feedback. I don't even think I invented that phrase, but that's the truth of reality, the way I see it. So when people start making meaning out of their life and they start realizing, oh my gosh, look at what all my life is about. Because your focus can get very narrow when you're very ill or very hurt or injured. And so just imagine like a camera lens, we got to open it back up. So we got to point the camera to what we want to focus on in terms of the process of good health. You want to focus on love and you want to focus on making meaning. And that's what we were talking about last week. And so that kind of brings us up to right now. And so it's also the beginning of you becoming conscious. It's like, wow, have I been around anything that I love lately? When did I detach from that? When did that stop happening? And normally through conversation, my clients and I can sit and trace it and understand exactly where they started losing contact with that. And when they start putting it back together, and I've had young people that I work with that are at major odds with their parents, and major illness has resulted in the break and the rift between the parent and their child. Once I help them reunite with their parents, and that's why I love working with young people. It's so fun. But if you can just use this as an imaginary case, I remember one young kid, he was 15. I started working with him and I told him that his parents would pay for me to work with him. And he goes, no way, I'm never going to work with you. And I said, wow, okay, are you sure? Because we got the go ahead. Your parents are willing to do it. And he said, nope, there's no way I'm working with you because my mom and dad are completely emotionally unavailable. They're intellectually unavailable. They're intuitively unavailable. I can't get to them in any way and have any kind of positive impact at all. And I don't want to work with anybody and have anybody telling me what my business is. He said, but I would love to be your friend. And I thought that was pretty interesting coming from a 15-year-old. So I said, well, let's look at what that would mean. Because the end result is I have to get you in good standing with your parents, and I have to get your parents in good standing with you if we have any chance of healing all of your lives. And he said, I'll go for it. And I think that was about a week before Thanksgiving. And by the time Christmas came, he showed up for Christmas dinner. He and his girlfriend, young girl, they made some stuff over her mom's house and brought it, and seeing the family come back together and seeing him be a part of that, and like he could feel like he's a son that belongs to these two parents, and they felt like they were parents who belonged with him. Watching that happen is quite amazing. And that is definitely a result of entering into the process of good health and helping him figure out where he had lost his way and where the break had occurred. And we began putting it back together step by step from there. Then the next thing you do in the process of good health is once you've got your focus set and it's like, okay, I'm going to heal my life, not just my physical body, my physical, mental, emotional body. I'm going to heal it all. My physical, mental, emotional, psychic, and spiritual aspects of your being. Once you make that commitment and decide to start working your way towards that, your life changes in ways that you never would have believed possible, and that also changes in ways that you always hoped were possible, but you had never seen any real example of it. So I'm just pondering here for a moment. Once we get back on track, and I've talked about love a lot, but like I said, love is the end game, it's the middle game, it's the beginning game. Love is where all the treasures are to be found for all healing. So, but once you've established your focus, okay, I've made the choice. I'm going to say, for instance, try somebody like Rodney out. We're going to see if we can find a way that I can heal. Well, then you have to understand what kind of things that you're working with here. And I'm just going to make a little noise here again. And so you go from the focus, and you have to start creating the substance of your healing journey. And the substance begins with re-engaging freedom. Really beginning to understand any illness usually takes away part of your freedom in little ways and in giant ways. And if you want to regain that freedom, if you want to take back your power to heal, you have to understand that that freedom comes with the gift of responsibility. And I don't mean blame by any stretch of the imagination here. No way are we talking about blame and assigning guilt. We are talking about reclaiming your responsibility, your ability to respond. So if you think about an illness, do you feel better giving it over to someone else? Or would you rather learn how to maintain and constantly generate and constantly be in a state of good health on your own? Because this is very much about teaching you how to heal yourself first. Then when you have enough good health and enough love that's left over that you're so happy you can't hold it all, then you can share it with somebody who cares about you and someone who is important and who has your well-being in mind as much as you do. So that comes when you take responsibility. I would rather have the ability to respond to my life the way I choose to respond than hand that over to someone else. So when we talk about the process of good health, we're moving into the second stage of that process, which is acquiring. Because in the beginning of your process of good health, you probably aren't going to be around every person, place, thing, or thought, action, deed that you love. That's most likely already been demonstrated to be in jeopardy. But also, when you come back to how to consciously create success, and you start examining your world, and you begin to create the depth in your life, the gifts will start coming to you, and they will become obvious. And they're probably not as obvious at the beginning of the healing process, but by the end of the healing process, they should be second nature to you. And that is, to begin with, receiving the gift of freedom and being willing to be responsible with that. The ability to take over responsibility is huge, because a lot of times when you're very ill and very hurt, you just want to let everybody else have it and let them take over, which at some point may be exactly what you need to do. But ultimately, you're going to have to reclaim the ability and willingness to act, which is all that responsibility is. Responsibility. You're reacquiring your willingness and ability to act. And the gift that comes from that is the gift of freedom. As you begin to heal, as you begin to evolve your consciousness and your being and move from a state of illness into a state of well-being, you will most assuredly need the ability to respond to things. And along with the substance, this is where the real weight of healing is you get a couple more gifts that a lot of people, when they're ill, they don't realize that they have. And that's the gift of choice and decision. So first, it starts out with trying to reclaim your freedom. And the greatest gift of freedom is the gift of responsibility. You now have the ability to respond to your life. And if you want others to help you do that, that's totally fine. And if you want to do that in conjunction with others, it's completely fine. But it is a necessity in your healing journey. And along with it comes the gift of choice and decision. So when you choose something, I used to wrestle with this concept all the time. It's like, what's the difference between choice and decision? And I finally worked it out to my standards and my ability to think about it as, when I choose something, I'm simply saying, I would rather have A than B. So I make a choice. I want to begin to move forward to acquire A. But it's much deeper than that. So it looks like deciding to go for A is the same as choosing to go for A. But it's not. Choosing to go for A instead of B, or B instead of A, just means that you now have put your attention on the issue, and now you have to set the intention. And the intention comes with decision. So when you exercise the gifts of choice and decision, you scan the landscape and you look for what direction you want to head in. And that's a choice. But in order to fulfill your journey, you have to decide. And to decide, here again, just another word playing around with words, is when you cut off, decide. So you cut off from your past, your guilt, your pity, your destructive tendencies, and you cut off from all that, and you leave yourself no other option than getting well and healing yourself and learning how to do it on your own to a degree where you can help others do it as well. So what you're given in this world is very much a part of your healing journey. So it starts with the focus, and then it comes into the gifts that you get, And believe me, responsibility is a gift, because when you know you run the show, it's so much more peaceful than wondering about what someone else is going to do and how they're going to run your life for you. And a lot of times people who are ill, they've given up that ability, and it's so fun to see them when they take it back. They take back their freedom and they take back their responsibility. And then I help them make choices. It's like, where do you think you'd rather be? Over here or over there? What looks like the most productive and peaceful and happy and love-filled place to go to? Then when people buy in 100%, and we go from, I think I prefer A over B, it's like, well, can you decide that that's what you're going for? And that eliminates B from the picture. And your only option is A, which is healing, which is getting well, which is relieving yourself from any illness or injury that you could possibly imagine. So then there's another part of the focus that are the actions. And the greatest of the actions that you can take to get yourself well, and here it just pops up again, is the act of loving and being loved. Not just loving, which is giving, responding, respecting, having the humility to know the next second can be different than anything before it, having the willingness to commit, to be intimate and vulnerable. So here that love is back again. The greatest act that you can have as part of the substance of your good health is the act of loving and being loved. Now let's don't underestimate being loved. Don't shortchange it for a second. Because life is a gift from God, Goddess, all that is. That is to say, both the masculine and feminine aspects of the universe. What they give is a gift. And our human journey is to learn to receive the gift. So life is a gift from God, Goddess, all that is, and ours is to learn how to receive. Getting well is a gift from God, Goddess, all that is. And ours is to learn to receive that. So when you think, wow, I'm taking action of loving and being loved, that means you have to receive the gift of being loved. We know how to be loving because love is a state of being, and it is a set of actions as well. And those set of actions are what we just talked about: the giving, responding, respecting, having the humility, the willingness to be intimate and vulnerable. So when you take the action of being loved, it can seem a little contradictory in the beginning. It's like, how can I be a loving person and take time to be loved as well? It's like you can. And the more you emphasize being loved and allowing yourself to be loved, the better off you'll be. I have a friend in my neighborhood who's come down with cancer, and I've only met him recently, but I stopped by to see him and ask him if I could be of any assistance and of any help to him. And he said, no, I'm going to do this my way. And I thought, well, great. I hope you have a really good way of doing it, because I really would like to see that person get well. And I know they can, because remember, when you have something like, say, cancer, for instance, you have about somewhere between 50 to 70 trillion cells in your body. So if you look at, say, they found a tumor or they found a couple tumors or whatever, that's a small amount and part of you that is not well compared to how many cells you have in your body that are functioning properly and generating good health for you. So always remember the odds are in your favor. So this fellow, I stopped by another time, and because he sits out on his porch all the time, and I asked him, could I be of help again? Could I cut his grass for him? Could I move anything around for him? And he's like, nope, I don't want to receive any help. And I walked away sad from that, because if you're not willing to receive help, you're blocking out tons and tons of healing that can come from so many different directions, so many different people in so many different ways. So it's really important to have that passive aspect of receiving the gift of loving and being loved. Don't underestimate being loved and being honored and taken care of. And don't shoo away help when it shows up on your doorstep. At least examine it and take a look and see if it's the right thing for you. So now the greatest act, the act of loving and being loved, leads to the greatest joy, which is the joy of healing. And it is also the satisfaction of your preferences. So just imagine as you're moving along from illness and you're on your way back to health, and it takes however long it takes. I work with some people for 5 and 10 years at a crack, because that's what the medical community requires. So on average, the medical community at this time wants to see somebody have clean scans and clean blood work and such for 5 years before they'll officially call someone in remission. So even though we can help them get their health back much faster than that, still gotta abide by the medical rules and stay at the process of good health. So we're looking at the focus first. Now we're looking at the substance. So this is the meat. Where do you really start creating your health? It's when you realize you have a gift of responsibility, and it's a gift, it's not a burden. And it's the greatest gift of freedom. And the first thing you've lost when you get sick is your freedom. So to willingly take back that freedom and that responsibility is a huge move forward in the process of good health. And it's comprised of freedom and responsibility, but also choice and decision. So not only just a preference, but a decision to commit to getting well, and you rule out all other options. And I mean that sincerely. A lot of people will say, well, there's so many different ways this can get me. How can I possibly deal with this? Believe me, you can. And if you commit to being well, and if you commit to the process of good health, you'll be astounded at how many problems get solved once you engage this process. And it requires that you deal with the nitty-gritty substance. Taking responsibility is a big deal. Admitting that you've lost some of your freedom is a big deal. And going in search of re-engaging that is a big deal. But along with it comes the gifts of choice and decision, which is high-powered stuff. when you no longer just look at something and go, I think I like that better than this. When you commit to one or the other, all manner of things come into play that will aid you. Then when you realize that part of the actions that you take is to stay involved in the process of good health is the act of loving and being loved. So love just shows up everywhere. Then you put yourself in a position to experience the greatest joy, and that's the joy of healing. And I'll give you a little functional way to look at this. The satisfaction of our needs can create happiness. You can be a happy person if you're meeting your needs. But if you want to move into being a person filled with joy, which I highly recommend to everyone, and I hope I'm inspiring you to look at this as we're talking. Joy is the satisfaction of your preferences. So not only did you say, I choose healing over illness, and I'm willing to make a decision to cut off from any form of illness whatsoever. And that doesn't mean to ignore it, but it means you don't give illness the energy. You give health the energy. You give your well-being your energy. You give the process of good health your energy. As I said last week, I've had 3 major surgeries, 5 surgeries, 2 hospitalizations in critical intensive care, and I think the past 16 months, and I've come out of it just fine. It's because I don't give any energy to the illness or to the injuries. I only give the energy to getting well. So a lot of doctors think I'm a pain in the butt, and a lot of them think I'm a really good patient because I do everything that they tell me. And I add to it what I want to put in there as well. And I just keep getting well from everything, and I don't worry about the illness. I had one surgery, which was a major surgery on my throat. And they said I would be in recovery and admitted to a room, and the doctor would see me maybe in the next day or two, and that I would be a couple days there. And less than, I would say, 6 hours from that major surgery to my throat, that had to put my throat back together, the doctor and I were sitting around telling stories. The surgeon and I should say, were sitting around telling stories 7 hours after that surgery. And I was sent home early the next morning. And he almost couldn't believe that I was a patient who needed such a serious throat surgery. Because it's like we did it, like, okay. Then he comes to visit me after in recovery, and it's like, well, I'm already recovered, I'm already back in a room. And then we sit around and talk about hunting and sharing hunting and fishing stories for the next couple hours. That's when you know you're on the right track to reclaiming your good health. And not once did we say anything negative about my health. We only talked about how good it was going to be now that I had the repair to my throat that was necessary. So this is to help you think about where you're putting your energy as well. So are you receiving the gift of freedom and responsibility? Are you exercising choice and decision? Are you taking the acts of loving and being loved? And being loved and being loved. Remember, you have to receive it. If you only want to give it and you don't receive it, you're going to create a tremendous imbalance that'll prolong your illness and make it go longer. So really learn how to start receiving the love and let people help you who want to help. I don't recommend letting people come in and take over your life. I'm talking about genuine help, where someone has your best interest at hand and they're never encroaching on your private space. They're only giving to your life in ways that you allow in, but you have to make a decision to allow that in. And remember that will surely lead you to joy. And remember that joy is, I think my glasses might be crooked. Yep. Joy is the fulfillment of your preferences after you've already fulfilled your needs. So when you're talking about getting well and you're looking about creating your way back, you have to remember your needs have to be taken care of. So you have to establish that mindset. Yes, I will make sure I get everything I need every day. Because a lot of people who come to me, nobody's filling their needs. Nobody's helping them. And they don't have a clue as how to help themselves. And that's not saying you have to have other people help you fulfill your needs, but it's likely that if you have a serious injury or illness, that other people are going to need to be helping you, and you have to let that in. And as that progresses, those needs get handled, and you move into preference. Say, for instance, I work with a lot of athletes, and I take them, I get them prepped for surgery. We do a lot of pre-op work. Then I'm there for the surgeries, and a lot of times in different places. I've been in the surgical theaters with my clients. And then we have our post-op recovery. And we always kind of base that on the doctors will say, it's probably going to take you, say, 3 weeks on crutches, non-weight bearing. You can't put any weight on your foot at all for at least 3 weeks. And then you can start physical therapy, and then you can work your way back into being able to use your limb again or whatever. We sit around and my clients and I sit around and go, is it possible that we could make this recovery period, instead of 3 weeks non-weight bearing, that you could heal up so fast that you could be weight bearing within 1 week? And then we could accelerate the rest of the healing on top of that. And we just start examining the possibilities. And then when someone makes that choice, it's like, yeah, Rodney, let's see if we can get the ability to put weight on this. If the doctor allows it, let's see how fast we can do that. And that's because it's a preference. I'd rather people say, I'm choosing to get well faster than slower. I don't want to be the slowpoke on the journey. I don't want to be the average person who, on average, it takes 3 weeks before you can bear weight. Those are averages, and those are prescriptions that are given based upon average. But once you learn how to live the process of good health, average isn't even satisfactory ever again in your life. You'll always find yourself growing, expanding, and reaching to whenever anything comes up. You'll know you'll not only have a pathway to get better from it, but you can also expedite your healing process and make it faster than you ever thought. Oh Lord, I've already passed the first hour. Well, good. It takes time to explain all this stuff. So I feel blessed to have another 45 minutes to spend with you guys. So the process of good health, 7 distinctive stages, begins with the focus, moves its way into the substance, then you have to start to examine the way that you're focusing yourself. The third stage is always a pause and establishing the way in which you engage the focuses of being around things, people, places, things, thoughts, actions, deeds that you love, making meaning out of your life. The way you do that makes all the difference. And the way you orient around that makes all the difference. So the third part is always the form. It's like, what form is this going to take? Because it can take many different forms depending upon the person. And we have to find the form that is right for you. And also remember, in these first opening stages, you're beginning to get your freedom back. You're beginning to get your focus back. You're beginning to get the meaning back. You're beginning to get the gifts back. You're beginning to get choice and decision back. You're beginning to reattain loving. You're beginning to have joy. But when we get to the fourth step of the process, the third step, remember, is how you go about it. Do you put things out of order? Or do you create a logical framework of progression that you can engage your process of good health? And that is how you acquire the focus, how you engage the substance, and always remember, when you're thinking about stage 3 in the process of good health, that it's always, do you have your house in order? And remember that when you're in the process of good health, this is why the way is so important, because the steps of getting there have to have the qualities of being there. So therefore, the steps of getting well have to have the qualities of being well. So it's very important how you do all this, the way in which you go about it. And then we get to the fourth stage of the process of good health. And I'm just going to make a little bit of noise here real quick. Sorry about that, guys. Once you understand the way, it has to have the qualities of being there. You move to the fourth and most determined part of any process, and especially the process of good health, is the aliveness. I may have spoken about this last week, but I went to work with a gentleman who had stage 4 metastatic prostate cancer that had gone all over his body. And I arrived to work with him in the morning. On the first day, I had flown to Southern California to meet with this person. And I had an initial consultation with him in the morning. We talked about what I would be doing and how I could be helping him and ways that I could help and the things that we could accomplish. And he just got up after we got done talking and called his wife in. And he said, "Mr. Blount, you've done nothing but serve me fairy dust. And I don't appreciate it. And I don't believe in any of it. So you can go now." And I just want to make sure that if I'm repeating this, the long and short of it was, I asked him, I said, "My flight isn't leaving till 5 o'clock this evening. So could we try something to see if I could at least get you out of pain and bring some life back into you?" Because he was sleeping on his couch when I arrived. And apparently, according to his wife, he had been sleeping there for 6 weeks. and barely getting up to go to the bathroom, and not eating, not taking care of himself, and what have you. And his wife tried everything, but he wasn't allowing it in. So he let me work on him, and we just did some very basic stuff, but we also went through this process so that he could have an understanding of where we were heading. And then it was time for me to go to get my plane, and I said, okay, so that will be what we can do for today, and I hope I helped you, and I hope I gave you some hope, and hope that I gave you some understanding that you can get well. And he got up and he said, I feel better than I've felt in probably 6 months to a year, and you have introduced me to things that I never would have believed possible, and I feel like I never thought I'd be possible to feel this again, and I would like you to stay for the full 7 days that you're scheduled here, and I'd like to continue working with you from now on. So the important thing about this statement is it's an example of how you can lose your aliveness. So all the aliveness had gone from him, and I just wanted a chance to reestablish that with him, to see if that could bring him hope, because he definitely felt better once we were done. He felt significantly better, to the point where he wanted to go to the grocery store and the vitamin store to get everything that we talked about that he would need to nourish himself and get back on the way to health. So we went from finding him on the couch, being there for 6 weeks, to 4 or 5 hours later, going to pick up vitamins and foods and blenders and juicers so that he could have the maximum nutrition to help him fight off his disease. And he had a very successful recovery and added many years to his life. But if he hadn't taken the understanding about the aliveness, I don't think he would have made it. So when we talk about aliveness, we're talking about physical aliveness. Of course, if you're ill or hurt, your ability to have that physical aliveness is of prime importance. So a lot of people just stop there and think, well, if you can fix my injury or illness, that's as much aliveness as I have to have. But when you really think about it, it has to go beyond that. Not just the physical aliveness, but the mental aliveness, the emotional aliveness, the psychic, intuitive aliveness, and your spiritual aliveness. Physically, mentally, emotionally, psychically alive, to bring life back into those aspects of your being is crucial, and it's the fourth stage in the process of good health. So a lot of people say, I don't have any more aliveness. And I say, well, I would like to tell you about some stuff that could really help you. And they just shut it down. It's like, no, I don't want to do anything that requires me to think and requires me to make choices and decisions. And once I convince them that it's a worthwhile process, they begin to become mentally stimulated. And when that happens, the mind starts imagining ways to get back to health and what it will be like to come back to health. So your mental aliveness is a key component of taking back your power to heal. Not reclaiming just your physical aliveness, getting a leg put in a cast or having a surgery, whatever, doing what you need to get your physical aliveness back. But if you're emotionally and mentally in the tank, I would assert that your physical aliveness is going to suffer as a consequence of that. So realizing that you have to come back. And not only are you trying to physically get fixed and physically get better, but that's not the end of it. You have to mentally and emotionally get better as well. You have to restore that. And you have to restore the aliveness to that, the vitality to that. Because it's physical, mental, emotional, psychic, and spiritual. That's what I work with people on every level. And that's the level of aliveness that has to be re-engaged and reinstituted if people are going to be well. So physically better, mentally better, emotionally better, psychically and intuitively. You'd be amazed at how many people say, something came to me in a dream. And I was just half dozing off, and this thought about being well and something that we could try to help me be better came to me. That has to be restored as well, that intuitive aliveness. And then finally, when you're looking at dealing with yourself as more than just a sack of flesh with bones and tissue and muscles, and you look at yourself as a expanded being that operates on many levels, you realize the necessity of your spiritual aliveness as well. And I'm not talking about religion in any sense of the word. I'm talking about your spirit. I had a famous rock musician one time that was a client, and we had gotten him physically back to where he needed to get. And I said, okay, so we're going to have to start looking at your spirituality if we want to really move this where we want to go. And he goes, don't talk to me about any of that crap. I don't want any Jesus shoved down my throat. I don't want to do your religious stuff and everything. And I said, oh, I didn't have any intention about talking any of that. And he said, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, when you get up there and play, when you strap that guitar on and your band gets going and you start playing for thousands and thousands of people, what kind of spirit do you think you have then? And what kind of spirit do you think it takes in order to be the person who can do that? He said, well, a strong spirit. And I said, yeah, so your spirit has bearing, and it is the motor that runs your life. So to ignore the spiritual aliveness would be a huge omission. So he finally said, okay, so don't you say anything to me about religion now. I said, we won't talk about it all. We're just going to talk about your spirit. We're going to see if your spirit is where you want it to be, if it's the right spirit for you. If it is, sorry, I'm taking my watch off here, guys. If it is the spirit that you want to live with the rest of your life, and if you want to have that be an asset and an ally as opposed to an enemy. So physical, mental, emotional, psychic, and spiritual, all components that I work with, all components that are part of the process of good health. Then once you've rounded the bend and you've made the turn from the fourth component, that's the most determined component of any process. And remember, a process starts when you put your attention on something with intention of arriving at a particular point. So any process, the fourth stage is always the most determined and always the one that you have to really dig in and go through. And the fourth stage of the process of good health is the aliveness. The fifth stage, once you've rounded that corner of the fourth stage and you're headed to the fifth stage, corresponds to the third stage. The only difference is right now, you're not beginning to think about the way that you adjust your focuses and received your gifts and built the substance. It's knowing the way. It's no longer looking for the way or trying to find a way, how you want to put things together. It's knowing the way. And it corresponds with step 3, knowing the way, how to do it properly, knowing how to get yourself put together and get your priorities straight to a degree to where you're starting to generate good health as opposed to illness. And see, it's not enough to just get illness. You have to replace it with something. To get rid of illness is one thing, but it has to be replaced with something. And that's a rule, a universal rule. So you can't take away something and not put something in its place. And what we're putting in the place of illness is the process of good health. So now we're at stage 5 in the process of good health, and that corresponds to stage 3, the way you go about it, the elegance, the ease, the least amount of effort, the maximum amount of return. Consciously choosing the most elegant path as your second nature. And the 6th part of the process of good health corresponds with the second part, the substance. So now you're not just thinking about becoming free, you are becoming free. You're not thinking about taking responsibility. It's second nature. You have the ability and willingness to respond, plus access to resources that you've been acquiring over time. So now this becomes part of you. And you're taking the actions, the greatest act of loving and being loved, and allowing that into your life to a point where it starts to create joy because you're receiving the outcomes from your preferences, not just that your needs. So the 7th step of the process of good health is correspondent to the first step in the process of creating the focus. Now, the difference between being at the 7th stage and the first stage, you're just setting your focus. You're just learning what your focus needs to be. What are the things you should focus on? And definitely learning how to get back to having fun and consciously creating success. When you get to step 7, you know that those are priorities. And you live it. And you live it like those are the priorities. And you receive the substance, the gifts, the actions, the joys, the happiness. With responsibility, with total, complete responsibility. You engage this entire process with total conscious responsibility. And when you can do that, when you can hold all of this in your mind, you know what you need to be focusing on. You know the substance of what you have to create. You know the form. You understand the way you have to go about it. It has to be in a particular order. You can't just throw random things out there, which I see a lot of healers do, whether they be MDs, part of the establishment, or alternative. They just do these haphazard approaches, and you have to have an approach, and you have to have it well defined, and you have to live it. So when you get to the 7th step of this, you're doing it all consciously. You're putting your attention on the goal of getting well with intention, with the choice and decision, knowing that you're going to return to good health and illness or injury is no longer an option. When you can do that with total responsibility, and that's your show, and you take it and you run with it, and you get the right healers for you, you get the right doctors for you, you get the right whatever you need, and you start engaging this process. Even if you don't see anybody, if you do this, you will start getting better. I guarantee you. So just think about it. Once you realize, wow, I'm trying to get back to having fun. I'm trying to get back to making meaning out of my life. I have all these gifts of freedom and responsibility and choice and decision. And I have the actions of loving and being loved. And I've worked my way into the joy of healing. And I do that in a particular manner, in a particular way. And then it brings me there to where I can be totally responsible with each of those aspects. You are definitely going to be better. I can vouch for that myself, as having had deadly illness when I was 5.5. They said I would be dead by the time I was 10. And instead, I lived past 10. And I went to college on a football and track scholarship. And I had many accomplishments in my life with many setbacks, but I overcame them all because somehow this process intuitively came into my life. And then later, I learned it formally with my teacher. So now, there you go. There's the process of good health. So it's a process. It's not an event. It's constantly growing, constantly expanding, always improving, always becoming more. Once you engage that, and you know that that's what good health looks like, then we can ask ourselves, what? Well, then, if I can do all that, why have illness at all? And I can say this much, it's something to learn from to start with. But let's look at illness and let's look at what it is. To begin with, it's a disorientation from the focus of good health. You don't know what to love. You don't know who to love. You don't know how to love. You don't know how to be loved. You don't know how to make meaning of your life. This is when illness is creeping around, when you become disoriented from the focuses of your life. And it's alienation from the substance. What do I mean by that? It's like, I find people all the time, I don't have any of the freedoms. I'm unable to take responsibility for myself. I don't have any of the gifts of choice and decision. I don't have the ability to love and be loved. My sickness has taken me down so far. I'm disoriented from any of that substance. So it's disorientation from the focus, alienation from the substance. Disorientation, alienation, disorder. Things are out of order. Priorities are not aligned in the way you're going about living your life, and attaining and sustaining good health is in jeopardy. And that's part of what illness is telling you, that you're out of order, that your affairs are out of order, and that you're not receiving any of the gifts and actions and states of being, and you don't have the right focus. You're focused on the daily grind instead of on love. The supreme focus that you should have at all times. So it's disorientation from the focus, alienation from the substance, disorder with regards to the way you go about living your life. And finally, it's telling you there's a failure somewhere. Now, if you're sick and you're not well, you don't want to hear that you're failing somehow. But that's only a problem if we elevate success to such a degree that failure gets lowered to such a degree that no one ever wants to think that it could happen. But usually when there's an illness around, there's failure in some area of your life that it's giving you a hint about. It's giving you a message in some way that something is failing in your life. And what does it mean to fail? It's just feedback that you're not doing what you want to be doing or ought to be doing. And success is just a message from the world that you are doing what you should be doing and that all departments are just fine. So illness is a disorientation from the focus, disorder from the substance. Alienation from the substance, disorder in terms of the way you're going about things, and failure in some aspect of your life. Just the message that something isn't being approached properly. That's all it is. It's just a message. And if you stay with this process, you'll get back to where everything starts succeeding and there's no longer a failure component to your illness. So now let's look at if we have all this power and we have all this ability to stay well, and we have all these resources and we have all these things that I've been talking about, what would be the point in having an illness? What would be the point in getting disorientated from your focus, alienated from your substance, out of order with the things that are important to you, or failures cropping up somewhere in your life? But you can find it, you can address it, and you can turn it back into success. If this can all be overcome and this can all be engineered in such a way that you return to the process of good health, what was the point of the illness in the first place? Well, illness has 4 primary functions that it serves. And one of them is that it's trying to send you a message, whether that be your subconscious or unconscious, or your higher self, or your soul, or God. Illness serves the purpose of getting a coded message to you. Because if those higher aspects of yourself were to start talking to you out loud in the middle of the street, it might seem a little strange. So your higher self, your soul, can send you a message via illness. Because you could get those same messages in meditation. You could get those messages in dreaming. You could get those messages in praying. But those means aren't available, so your higher self sends you a coded message that your ego can't interpret. That the message will be sure to get through to you in the form of illness, because your higher self knows you'll pay attention to that. And while we're on that, you might as well pay attention in this way. Listen to the whispers, folks. When you start to get a message from your body, listen to the whispers before you have to hear the shouts. So if something's up, get on it early and begin the process of good health immediately, returning yourself back so that you're not getting some coded message where you didn't hear the people when they pulled up in the driveway. Now they're knocking on the door and trying to get in, and it gets more and more intense as it goes. So just respond to the whispers and you won't have to hear the shouts. So listen to that first message from your body. Think it through. When something comes up and there's a pain or ache somewhere, don't think, oh, how crappy it is. I feel bad. This hurts, that hurts, whatever. Think, I'm getting a message here from something, and I want to use my intuition to see what that message is and seek the answer. Another thing that illness is a cooperation. It's a cooperation of your body with your belief systems. So we create reality with our thoughts and feelings, beliefs and attitudes, choices and decisions, and our desire, our imagination, and our expectancy. Thoughts and feelings, beliefs and attitudes, choices and decisions, desire, imagination, and expectancy. Those are the components that you have to create a lifetime and co-create with God, Goddess, all that is. So illness is often a cooperation with your deepest held beliefs, with your body cooperating. So you want to be careful when you say, "Oh, I'm screwed, man. Oh, and you say things like that. "Oh, I'm dead meat now." Be careful how you state things to yourself, because your body may just cooperate, because it's a more elegant way to get a little bump or a bruise here, or even a broken leg or whatever. In the grander scheme of things, if it gets that message to you, then it could be worth it. So illness is always an opportunity to become more. So it can also be friction between competing beliefs that you have. You might believe that you're going to live forever, but you don't really want to live forever ever, because you want to go to heaven someday. You want to go to freer realms where you're not just stuck in a body forever. That would be the punishment. That wouldn't be the prize. The object is to evolve your life so that when a time comes, you can become lighter than the actual physical body and move into the higher realms where God, your creator, is, where the goddess is, where your higher self and soul reside. Finally, illness can be a release of tension. So this is why stress becomes so important in the medical world. And so many famous doctors, including like Deepak Chopra and some others, say that stress can kill you. It can, because if there are tensions in competing beliefs, if there are tensions in the body cooperating with that, if there's a message from your higher self that isn't able to get through, that it's blocked out because you don't want to pay attention and you don't want to live a deep, meaningful life, illness can pop up as a way out. And finally, it can be a manipulation. And I'm not saying that people are manipulative, but illness can give us a lot of reasons to do a lot of things. Like not talk to our wife, not talk to our kids, feel like, poor me, I got this illness, I can't do this, I don't have to talk to you, I don't have to engage with my world, I don't have to engage. It can be a way out. And it's a very costly way out. There are much more elegant, beautiful ways to go. So I don't suggest using illness as any kind of manipulation ever. Take total responsibility for it and own it, and own your process of good health and move back into it. So finally, we come to what a healer should do for you. A good healer, any healer, no matter what way that they go about it, from using energy and resonance all the way up to using pills and surgeries and procedures, and anybody who's helping you along your healing journey should do these things for you. And the first thing they should do for you, and you can feel this out, say for instance, your first visit with a doctor or a healer or whatever, is, are they raising your hope? And is your fear lowering when you engage them? Because it should be. Usually my clients, when I go to work with them, no matter what illness they got, when they've told they're going to be dead in less than 2 weeks, once that hope starts raising, not false hope, and once that fear starts going down, people get a little bit of room to breathe and respond and react. And they should also help you make the choice to return to the process of good health and commit and decide to that and cut off from any engagement, physically, mentally, emotionally, psychically, or spiritually, given any energy to illness. And they should help you address what you have. They should find out what level it's being created on and help you heal those levels where the illness is occurring, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, psychic, or spiritual. They should look at that individually and in conjunction with one another and give you ways to cope with that. And in the beginning, they should help you bring about the cessation of symptoms and restore harmony to your being. Every healer that's a good healer should help you assess all levels and get back to your process of good health. And they have to suspend the belief in illness long enough for you to re-engage the process of good health. And then they should educate you on ways that you can maintain your process of good health and you can stay there and you can enjoy it and enjoy your life. So they should raise hope, lower fear, help you make the choice to return to the process of good health, help you identify what levels your illness is operating on, seek the restoration of harmony, help you suspend the belief in illness long enough so that you can begin to return to health, and educate you in ways to be able to maintain that forever for the rest of your life. So we've looked at what's a process, always has 7 components. There's a distinct process, the process of good health, which means you're cutting off from illness. We've looked at what the 7 stages of that are, from the focus to the substance, to the way, to the aliveness, to the full responsibility. We've looked at what illness is. We've looked at what functions, what purpose it has in our life, and we've looked at what a first-class healer should do for you. So guys, this is the end of it. I thought this show was going to go on forever, and I would get a long time to educate you on these things. So we're going to wrap it up. It's been a pleasure and a joy to be with you guys. It's been absolute joy. And I thank you for taking the time to listen. And I will see you back on podcast. I will see you back. And just look for the term soul guidance to pop up. And that'll be my overarching intention with my work throughout the rest of my life. So it's been a pleasure getting these couple sessions with you, and I hope you all have wonderful health, and I hope I restored some faith and hope and love into your life, and I wish you all the very best, and I will see you around very soon, and I will also see you at the top. Thank you very much, and good night.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.